Imagine, just for a second, a god willingly mutilating his own face, literally breaking off a piece of himself just to keep a pen moving, right? It sounds insane. But in this explainer, we're diving into exactly that, the cost of cosmic ink, specifically the story of Ganesha's broken tusk. When the great sage Vyasa was dictating the epic Mahabharata, the pace was so relentlessly fast that the scribe's pen actually snapped under the pressure. But instead of pausing this massive cosmic project, he made a brutal, split-second executive decision that changed his physical form forever. We're going to look at this not just as ancient myth, but as an absolutely fascinating case study in high-stakes leadership and unbreakable commitment. So, it brings up a huge question. What would you sacrifice for the ultimate mission? Because the greatest story ever told was literally almost lost to a broken tool. I want you to frame this whole event in your mind as a high-stakes leadership scenario. Think about it. If you were tasked with recording the history of the entire universe, with no pauses allowed, and your equipment just totally fails right in the middle of execution, what do you give up to keep that legacy from collapsing? Just how far are you willing to go to make sure the mission succeeds? Let's start with Section 1, an impossible cosmic project. Now, you really have to understand the incredible burden on Sage Vyasa. He literally held the entire Mahabharata inside his mind. And we're not just talking about a long story here. This was the complete, detailed record of a whole cosmic age. Every single war, every moral dilemma, all the betrayals, the deep cosmic secrets, he had all of it in his head. But he couldn't hold it in his mind and physically write it down at the same time without losing that delicate cosmic flow. He needed a scribe. But, not just your average scribe. He needed someone who could write at the supernatural speed of inspired thought. He needed a god. So Brahma, the creator, steps in and sends Lord Ganesha. And the sheer scale of this deliverable? It's staggering. 100,000. That's nearly 100,000 incredibly dense, complex verses that Ganesha was brought in to record. This absolutely wasn't some quick weekend sprint. This was an epic marathon. The stakes, quite literally, could not be higher. So let's look at the setup in Section 2, the unbreakable contract. Because this wasn't just simple dictation, right? This was a mission-critical negotiation between two incredibly capable entities. It's like a high-level contract. On one side, you have Ganesha's condition. Once they start, the pen can never stop, period. If Vyasa pauses for even a second, Ganesha walks and the epic is gone. But on the flip side, you have Vyasa's condition. Ganesha can't just act like a mindless transcriber. He has to completely, fully understand the deep philosophical meaning of every single verse before his stylus even touches the leaf. So we've got these two impossible conditions locked together perfectly, driving the whole engine of this project. So how do you actually survive a contract like that? Well, Vyasa created some brilliant, strategic breathing room. He knew he couldn't physically dictate without eventually needing to rest. So whenever he needed to catch his breath, he would just drop a verse of staggering philosophical density. I mean, we're talking layers of allegory, intense paradoxes, multidimensional meanings. They were so insanely complex that they actually forced Ganesha, who is literally the god of wisdom, to stop and think. And that tiny momentary pause while Ganesha processed the information, that was the exact breathing room Vyasa got to maintain this relentless, driving pace. And that leads right into Section 3, a critical mechanical failure. Okay, so the vow is set, and the writing begins. And a few days in, they establish this relentless, perfectly tuned rhythm. It's a total fever pitch of creation. But then, disaster strikes. We hit the breaking point. The stylus, which was just a simple reed pen, is pushed way beyond its physical limits, and it just snaps under the immense pressure of Ganesha's rapid, heavy writing strokes. The epic just hung in silence. I want you to imagine the atmospheric intensity of this split-second crisis. The pen is broken, but Vyasa's voice is still flowing because remember, he cannot stop. And Ganesha suddenly has no tool to write with. If he asks for a timeout to find a new pen, he breaks his own vow of continuous writing, and the whole transmission just collapses. The entire history of the world is literally hanging by a thread, right in this exact moment. Which brings us to Section 4, the ultimate divine sacrifice. Faced with total failure, Ganesha makes an immediate, almost unthinkable sacrifice. It happens in a flash. First, he acknowledges the unbreakable vow. The mission absolutely comes first. Second, he flat out refuses to search for a new tool, because that would cost time they simply don't have. Third, and this is the crazy part, he reaches up to his own face and decisively snaps off his own right ivory tusk. Just breaks it right off. And fourth, he dips that warm ivory into the ink and goes right back to writing. Think about that. He prioritized functional execution over aesthetic perfection. He literally ripped a piece of himself away to use as a stylus. This single brutal act perfectly defines the ancient Sanskrit concept of nishtha. It means complete, unbreakable dedication. It's the kind of commitment that holds absolutely true even when the tool breaks, the whole environment fails, and you literally have nothing left but yourself to offer. Ganesha took a mythological act and turned it into a really profound universal lesson on unbroken commitment. He absolutely refused to let a broken tool become an excuse for a broken promise. Let's move to our final section, the broken whole. So, the epic was finally saved, and because of this, Ganesha became known as Ekadanta, the One-Tusked deity. Now here's the thing. As a god, he could have easily just magically healed himself once the project was done, right? But he didn't. He chose to remain Ekadanta. He actually embraced this new form as a permanent identity, not as some physical flaw to be fixed. He stands there as living, visible proof that truly great, world-changing achievements, yeah, they are always going to leave permanent scars. It perfectly illustrates modern philosopher Nassim Taleb's concept of skin in the game. True credibility requires personal risk. It means you've actually bled for the craft. Ganesha literally put skin, well, or rather, ivory, in the game. That missing tusk isn't a sign of damage, it's a badge of ultimate credibility. It shows the world he was willing to pay the actual physical price to preserve something eternal. The legacy of the broken pen leaves us with some really undeniable truths. The actual, functional work is worth far, far more than maintaining this neat illusion of aesthetic perfection. Wounds and scars, they're the undeniable proof of real, messy, get-your-hands-dirty commitment. And ultimately, building a true legacy almost always requires the complete sacrifice of your own ego and your desire to appear perfectly whole. So, when your tool breaks right in the middle of the work, and believe me, it will definitely break, what are you willing to sacrifice to keep going? Are you going to stop and wait for better conditions? Or are you willing to trade your image of perfection to make sure the ultimate mission survives? Think about what your own Ekadanta moment might look like.